Now we know that, agriculture is the bedrock of the Kenyan economy, and any shocks to the agricultural economy, wields wider shocks for the Kenyan economy. So how have things changed, I think, in the last 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, it's true. Kenya's agricultural sector has been a key sector from a GDP perspective, historically accounting for over a quarter the size of the GDP. But over the sector, it's come down slightly to the regions of around 23 to 24%, although slightly last year came up back to 26%. So from a size perspective, nothing has changed much. The key thing which has changed is that new competing sectors anchoring the economy have come up, and the new entrants are tourism and diaspora inflows, which have tended to back the currency more strongly than revenues from agricultural exports.
Let's look at the various agricultural components, starting with tea, which is the hallmark really of the sector, accounting for a lot of the foreign exchange earnings that come through. In terms of the risks that tea is facing from a pricing perspective, from the cost of production, even the implications of things like politics in Egypt, how has that impacted this tea element of the agricultural economy?
Yes, I mean, tea remains a key crop for the whole agricultural menu and export earnings for the country. The key trend on tea has been a falling production, but a rising revenue, total revenues from exports, mainly because of rising prices. Prices have tended to come down when production is heavy, especially in 2007 and 2009. The key items which have affected tea have been, for a larger extent, having the markets. You realize the Kenyan tea is exported in predominantly perceived volatile regions like Egypt, as you mentioned, Pakistan, Afghanistan. But those are the key markets which Kenyans are focused because of the demand of the tea there.
Talk to us about coffee, because we know that Kenya aspires to be a major coffee producer, and you produce an export varied crop that's in demand. But I think recent figures have shown that although prices are good, output doesn't match that. What's the problem here?
Yes, coffee has fallen off as a key foreign exchange earner from the agricultural sector, mainly because of two important reasons. One, drought has affected predominantly coffee productive areas, and the entire sector has suffered reduced yields per acreage or per crop. And secondly, the predominantly coffee areas have been invaded by urbanization because most of them are closer to the capital city and have tended to be hotspots for property or real estate development.
What are authorities doing to fix this problem, I think, in the coffee sector? Because, we've spoken to many members of the Agricultural Board and the Coffee Board, and they really want to see it grow its profile in Kenya.
I mean, one of the key things needs to be done is induce some price certainty. Where it becomes at the start clear that a particular crop will lead to a particular revenue line. And then secondly is the ability to control costs. Currently, 60% of the costs in coffee production are uncontrollable, and that has been a challenge to farmers. And the third thing, we need to focus more on larger farms than small outgrowers.
What about other crops such as maize, for instance, sugar, which have also been investigated in this report?
Yes, maize is predominantly a staple food for the country in Kenya. Over 85% of the population is dependent on maize from a food perspective. The key problem for maize has been, again, small-scale farmers who are not able to find their produce to the market, don't have enough information about the price of their produce. And thirdly, there's been a huge outcry for middlemen who certainly exploit farmers by delivering their crop to the National Cereal Board. And then we have had one-off importations of maize, which is of lower quality and sometimes expensive, and sometimes are not needed. But lastly, the most important point about maize is that storage has been a problem. Certain regions of the country have to lose a lot of maize crop through bad storage.
Right. Okay, now let's talk about fixing the situation, talking about solutions in the future. You know, new mechanisms for financing and investing in the agricultural economy. Lots of talk about things like an agricultural commodity exchange, agro derivatives. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean the next frontier for the agricultural sector in Kenya, because it's obvious to remain a dominant sector in the economy, is to add value to the crop. And mainly value will be added by trying to export a more finished product. And secondly, trying to tackle quality and price certainty through an agricultural commodity exchange. And that will solve other historical issues to do with the storage and ability to access markets which are more quality driven other than quantity driven.